One of the things that most tech executives that we talk to in China that have been in China for a long time or focused on China for a long time is the fact that the market in China is actually quite different from most of the rest of the world. In fact, we kind of see a bit of a market inversion in China. Tech executives who spend a lot of time in multinationals see three keys to profitability and growth. The first being bigger tickets, the second being moving up the stack to software, and the third selling in long-term lucrative service contracts. And in China, those three keys don't work. The bigger ticket items tend to result in an open bid process, and that open bid process tends to depress differentiation as well as profitability. I think everybody knows how notoriously difficult it's been to monetize software in China. And then on top of that, the Chinese executives are quite resistant to signing some of those more lucrative long-term contracts that a lot of the Western companies have been accustomed to. If you take that all together, what that means is that while China is a very strong hardware market, in fact, they're number 2 in the world in hardware behind only the United States. If you look at the software and services side, they rank more as a number 7 or 8 market, depending a bit on how you measure it. That's kind of the bad news. The bright side of this is that overall enterprise growth across China continues to be quite strong, even despite some of the recent headwinds that we've seen globally and in China specifically. And for cloud, we actually see growth in the order of 30 to 40% over the next several years, where we expect the market to reach upwards of $20 billion by 2020. There's a few contributors to that, and I say contributors because they're not really drivers. They may be obstacles that we see lowering, or they may actually be things we see positively driving it. But the first of those is connectivity. And right now, connectivity in China is below where it really needs to in order to back the formation of a strong cloud ecosystem. The tier 1 cities are pretty strong, but when you get into the tier 2 or tier 3 cities, the connectivity infrastructure just isn't there to support cloud. But we see massive investment going into that space over the next several years, and we think that that will bring down that as a barrier to adoption. The China government, in addition to investing heavily in connectivity, has also come out explicitly stating that cloud is a strategic priority for the country. And you see this both in policy papers that they've issued, in various forums where they've presented, and they're backing that up with funding and, again, policy support to try to accelerate the adoption of cloud. And then the last one is a little bit of an artifact of where China came from, where many of the companies in China will have lower switching costs as they transition from where they are today into cloud. They're just less encumbered by the legacy IT systems that many companies in the West may face and hold them back as they make the decision to switch to cloud. That said, there is one obstacle that still remains quite strong and will probably remain even in the near future and over the midterm, and that is concerns around data security in China. That's a concern everywhere for cloud. I think it's probably a bit more acute in China in terms of the concerns. The way we interpret that is that it bodes quite well actually for private cloud in China, but probably holds back the development of public cloud. Public cloud is there in China. Certainly, Aliyun is a big player and leads the market. AWS is staking their ground, but mostly that's used for social media and other non-mission critical operations and activities. Whereas we think the enterprise customers will really lean towards private cloud solutions where they have a bit more control over their infrastructure and how they set it up. What's interesting is we actually think that's good news for most providers of hardware and software solutions for cloud, because if you have more buyers and more customized solutions, ultimately that probably means a larger and more profitable market.